Hi, everybody. In this video, I want to go over the late policy portion of the course syllabus. Now, I am specifically looking at 331-20313 for this video. However, it's going to be the same information for all my classes this semester. And then also moving forward, it'll be the same information for future classes. So maybe I may have, depending on when you're looking at this video, I may have made a few tweaks, but the idea will be the same. Now, this late policy is tied to many ideas within the professional conduct Word document, which is part of your readings for weeks 1 and 2 as you get started with the course. One of them that I wanted to point to has to do with the weekly class schedule. The weekly class schedule is the timeline by which work is to be accomplished. When work is not accomplished on time, there is a penalty, a lower grade. The date listed on the class schedule is the date the work is due. Now, of course, in another video, I do say that the final say is what's on Canvas. Whatever is in the weekly class schedule in the course syllabus, that's tentative in nature. It's a starting point. It's my idea before the semester even started about what I have in mind about how we will go through the different activities in the course. And then one more aspect from the professional conduct I wanted to point out is students are expected to assume responsibility for their actions and the completion of their assignments. So all of that is then based on this next idea that I have in the late policy section in your course syllabus. Just as in industry, when a job is submitted after the agreed upon due date, it is not considered unless prior arrangements have been made by all involved. In many cases, that's just something you do not do out in the workplace, right? Out in industry. Think about your job. What's going to happen if you just decide, oh, you're going to turn in something late and not let your supervisor know about it? Well, there's going to be consequences. So in the same way, that's how this course will operate. It's your responsibility to get the work done. And this late policy will be our guideline on how to handle different situations, because I also understand that life happens, that there are things that come up that we don't necessarily have control over. And so this late policy is something that I've developed over the years to address many of these situations. Now, in the end, if it's going to come down to an individual case by case type of thing. But generally speaking, this is where we will start. So, first part of the late assignment policy is that all late work will have a penalty of 10% for each day that it is late. After 7 days, it's going to earn 0 points. That's just how it's going to work. And given the expectations, many times in many situations, students just take the hit. Like they understand, oh, I'm going to be late. Then fine, you can be late. Just know that there will be a penalty to that. And then beyond 7 days, well, it's just not going to work out for you. It's going to be 0 points. And I'm going to go by the timestamp on your submission on Canvas to determine whether something is late or not. So, technically speaking, if so, for this class, all your assignments are 11:59 p.m. or most of them. So if it's submitted at 12 p.m., then technically that's going to be considered late. So what's the takeaway there? Well, don't wait until the last minute to work on your assignments and also to submit them. All work should be completed promptly and submitted to the instructor for evaluation. So, expanding on what I just said a few seconds ago, fortunately, if you start work early instead of waiting until the last minute to submit your files, you are less likely to run into this situation. Now, there is this one thing you're, that makes it even more generous. This late policy is the one and done late assignment policy. So I guess this is the part where I should say that this is specific to the marketing principles class in that it does not apply to assignment 9. So I guess what I should say then is take a look at the course syllabus to see what exceptions there are to this one and done late assignment policy, because it will differ from marketing principles. The idea is the same though with the one and done late assignment policy. You have one activity that you could submit late without penalty, without explanation, whatever, for any reason, provided that you complete it within 1 week of the due date. After that, no late submissions will be accepted without penalty. So we just go back to this original idea here that everything will earn a 10% penalty. So you get one. Really generous, right? And here's just the sentence again that I mentioned a few minutes ago. Any exceptions to the late assignment policy are at my discretion. Now, here's the last part, the extreme cases. Early communication is key. So things happen. I get that. Things happen that might not work out as far as this 10% penalty, or, if something happens and you feel like, yeah, it's really not because you goofed off and did not work on your assignment. It's truly because you had an extreme circumstance. So, typical examples would be a serious illness, a personal illness, or a death in the family, things of that nature. Then, yeah, of course, you should not get penalized for that, right? And then we don't want to have to apply this one and done for that unless you want to. And so in these extreme cases, early communication is key. If you don't contact me before the due date or within a reasonable amount of time, because I know some things happen and sometimes you just can't get a hold of me, or you're not able to do that until a reasonable amount of time. So I'm not saying, I mean, that's kind of, it depends on the situation, but if you let me know about it a month after, well, that's not going to be a reasonable amount of time. So early communication is key. Then, if you don't do that, as I was saying here, then the late assignment policy will apply to delayed submission. So this 10% penalty. Now, in extreme cases, you could apply for an extension without penalty. I do ask that you give me 3 pieces of information. Number one is, why should I accept your late work? So I'll tell you now, things like, oh, I was busy at work, or I forgot, things like that. No, that's not a reason to be late. Now, I do ask that you don't divulge personal things. I don't need to know the details of your medical conditions and your family, your loved ones' condition. Just give me a general idea of what's going on. And then number two, when would you like to submit your late work? So please let me know, like, what time frame are we talking about here? Now, the third one, this is the important part. If the request is made less than 24 hours before the due date or after the due date, then I would like to see partial work. So my whole thinking behind that is that when I assign something, you usually have 14, 15 days to complete it from the time that I posted on Canvas to the time that it's due. So there's all that time that you can do research, reading, writing during that time period. So this goes back to the whole idea in the beginning, not to wait till the last minute. So that's my whole thinking, is that you should be working on it regularly, to where when emergencies do happen, there's going to be partial work. So I'll be looking for that. And my general formula is, if it's one day before, then I want 90% of it. If you're asking for an extension 2 days before, then 80%, and so on. And this part with the tests, I'm not going to require partial work with tests, because you just take the test when you're able to do so. Now, the limit to this thing here is that I'll just give you an extra 14 days from the official due date, that extension with that. And with the test, that's 7 days. So there's a lot of moving parts to this late policy. The general idea is that I'm looking for your best work. I'm looking for you to be consistent in meeting the deadlines, and for you to also be responsible when it comes to communications, if for whatever reason you're not going to be able to meet a deadline. And that's our late policy.